Hi, everybody. My name's Jake Aigner. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. We talk to founders about, you guessed it, how they got their first customer. This episode and every episode is sponsored by my company, JDAQA Software Testing. We're your one-stop shop for manual, automated, performance, and security testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name's Jake Aigner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Jake Stein, the CEO and founder of Common Paper and about 50 other things. Jake, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jay? It's good to be here.
I'm great. We were talking a little bit before. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. I didn't know you were a YouTube sensation and a rapper and, entrepreneur of the year and all sorts of fun stuff. But let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in North Jersey, about like 30, 40 minutes outside of Manhattan in a town called Montville.
Okay. And where'd you go to high school and then to college?
I went to Montville Township High School, just the public school there, and then I went to college at UPenn in Philly.
Okay. Yeah, I saw Wharton, right?
Yeah.
Business school guy?
That's right.
What did you do at Wharton? Like, what was your goal kind of going there?
So I basically was just like really interested in business. I just thought like I was like the little kid reading Forbes magazines. Like my brother subscribed to it, so I just got him after he was done with it. I thought it was very fascinating. I remember I used to like watch CNBC. Like after I came home from high school, I was just totally into it, and I was like trying to figure out ways to make money on the internet when I in high school and had a couple of like harebrained schemes and made like $600. I was like pretty good at it. And then I just figured this is something like I wanted to go deeper on and learn more about. And then it was only like after I was maybe like 2 years into college that then I like decided like I was actually really interested in venture capital. And that was just after learning some stuff in the classes and attending some talks by like people in different lines of work. So like my second 2 years of college, like junior and senior year, that's what I was really focused on. Just like, how could I get in and become a VC in some way?
Got it. So two things out of that. What were your harebrained schemes in high school? First of all, I'd love to know.
Yeah. So probably my most successful one, there was a company called alladvantage.com, which was basically like, it was like a real like web 1.0 bubble prototype or prototypical company. So it was a browser extension that would put a permanent huge ad on your browser, and they would pay you for every hour that you were like online looking at this ad, but they would also give you a cut if you signed someone else up, and you got a cut of their hours. And then if they signed someone else up, you got a smaller cut of their hours. So like this was my first experience selling anything. And like there were about 200 kids in my high school class, and I signed up about 120 of them for this toolbar. I just like had so much fun with it. And then one of my buddies, John, in high school, he wrote a program to like you had to be actively browsing the web, like you couldn't just like leave your computer. So he wrote this thing to like quasi-randomly move your mouse across the screen and occasionally kick on things.
Absolutely beautiful.
That was one. There's the one other one which I love. There's a company called cyberrebate.com, and it was just an inventory of like places you can buy from early e-commerce sites and what rebates were available, where you could buy it, fill something out, send it back, and get some of your money back.
Yeah. And
there was occasionally some of these where the rebate was either close to or actually 100% of the purchase price. And this is me and my brother, we found a way to sign up for affiliate programs, buy these things, get them, fill out the rebate. So we'd be earning a commission on 0% paid. All these things, like the companies went bankrupt within 6 months, but it was a lot of fun.
Mainly because of you and your brother, I think.
That's right. I think we took them down.
It was the old Wild West. I miss those days, man. I think I grew up in Virginia, and there was we were like literally in the middle of nowhere, and our first internet provider, no kidding, was 3 Bubba's Internet. It was
That's
the dial-up service, you know, your little stupid web portal thing, and like all my cool friends had AOL, but I had 3 Bubba's Internet. So yes, I was very much, that was like when you're making GeoCities and AngelFire websites and stuff back. And I tried to find mine. I couldn't ever. I think they're still out there somewhere. I think.
Oh yeah, maybe. There's like someone archived all the GeoCity stuff, which I think is super cool.
Mine's probably out there somewhere. Maybe we should just stay hidden on the internet. You did Wharton. So tell me about the venture side of things. I don't hear that very often, that somebody gets a passion to be a venture capitalist. What was that about?
Yeah, it just like I was really interested in technology. I was really interested in business, and it just like I remember I used to read like Slashdot all the time, just like about new like technology, hardware, software, businesses, and I was just really fascinated. And I remember I was like doing my homework at some point in my sophomore year of college, and I took a break to read Slashdot, and it occurred to me like, oh man, it would be really amazing if that thing I'm doing for my break was actually like my job someday. Mm-hmm. And then I remember just like they had like speakers all the time coming through school, and like I used to go to them just because I was like fascinated to hear like, because I was thinking about what do I want to do. And when I heard a couple like VCs talk, I was like, wow, that's kind of it. You know, you just like learning about new stuff, deciding if you think it's interesting, trying to help it take off. It just seemed like the most interesting thing in the world to me. Mm-hmm. And then I had to try to figure out like, cause like it wasn't clear how you become one. Like it was usually like, okay, you go start a company, you're successful, and then you become a VC, or
right.
like you're an investment banker for 10 years and do that. So I was at first trying to figure out like maybe I do one of those things, or I just go into work at an investment bank, which is like what a lot of people coming out of Wharton do. But then I found one VC firm that was hiring straight out of college. And so I applied to that one, and that's where I worked.
Wow. I mean, I've owned a business for years, and I still thought it was kind of the former description there, where you have to like kind of do that. There's firms that you can just join and be part of a venture company.
Yeah. It's a little bit more common now. There's a handful of firms. It's still not super common. The firm that I worked at was called Insight Venture Partners. And you don't go there and like become a partner at a VC firm right. Straight out of school. Like I was right. The bottom of the totem pole. Mm. And so like it was like trying to find companies for the VCs to invest with. So some of the VCs have what's called like an outbound model. So I was like basically an SDR. Mm-hmm. Cold calling, cold emailing, like going to trade shows, just trying to find companies to invest in. And then when I found something promising, I would bring it to the partner. If they were interested, I would get to like sort of QB the diligence process. And, you know, we'd fly out, we'd visit the management team and do all this stuff. So like I got to do it was like an SDR who was also sometimes gets to like closely assist with an enterprise sale and then work with the company after the fact. And I worked there for 2 years. And I probably talked to thousands of startup founders. And my big lesson from that was I want to be on the other side of these phone calls. I realized I was much more interested in their job than my job. And like right. I learned a tremendous amount. I made some people who are still like my closest friends in the world, or people that I met there. But like I realized that was it was a good first thing and a good thing to orient. But I was more interested in like trying to start something myself.
Right. All right, so tell me what you did after that. Where did you go after the venture firm?
Yeah, so after Insight, so one of the people I met at Insight was a guy named Bob Moore, who he was like started at the same time as me, and it was like a really small like cohort of people. It was only 6 people, so we were all pretty close. And he actually had an idea for a startup, and he had been doing a couple things on the side. And basically, his idea, which I really liked, was a big part of like Insight's differentiation at that point is that they were very early into like what's now basically data science and analytics, where looking at the customer lifetime value, cohort analysis, churn, retention, all that stuff for these e-commerce and high volume SaaS businesses. And we would do this for like due diligence on new companies. And Bob's idea was, okay, this is really valuable for the investors. After we make the investment, the portfolio companies, like the management, are asking us, hey, can you rerun those numbers? Those are really interesting. Factor in this new product or cut the data a different way.
Right.
And so like we were sort of becoming almost like an outsourced analytics team for these companies. So like they really cared about it. The investors really cared about it, but it was like such a tremendous pain to do this because it was all completely manual and like SQL queries in a text file and doing a bunch of work in Excel. And so his idea was, let's productize this work that we're doing manually. Let's automate it. And he shared with like me and the handful of other analysts there that he was thinking about doing this. And I went up to his desk the next day and I told him, I think it's a good idea for you to, quit and go do this. It would be an even better idea for us to quit and go do this. And he still claims that he was planning on approaching me about it the whole time. I choose to believe that's true. So a little while after that, we both quit. We were living in New York at that point. He had already bought a house down in Philly because he grew up around here, and I had a great experience in college. So we both moved back down to this area and started working on RJ Metrics at that point.
So was RJ Robert and Jake?
Yes. Wow. Well, at first it was Robert J, and then I said, "This is my pitch. You don't even have to change the name."
That's a beautiful pitch. That's a good. I mean, no rebranding required. Just slide yourself right into the to the name. I like that.
Easy.
Wow. Well, that's a cool story. So, how did you guys get started? Who was your first customer there? Like, how did you guys get business in the door?
Yeah. So, a lot of the first handful of people that we got were just people in our broader network. So I think the actual very first paying customer was a friend of Bob's. It was actually, I think, a guy he had lived with in college briefly, like one of his housemates. And they had a startup, and we pitched them on, and they had their database was constructed in a particular way that was sort of common at the time, where they had sharded it, where they had like a MySQL production database, but to get more scalability, it was sharded into all these different instances. And that made analytics of the data extremely challenging. And so our pitch to them was, we will, this new BI product that we have will plug into that, reconstitute all your data, and give you one coherent view of all these different database instances. And so that was what we pitched them, and that was what they were on board with it. I think mostly they were just taking a chance on a friend, and also because there wasn't a great solution that existed for that at the time.
Right.
In reality, we were building the product for them. We had built some of it, but it was not ready to use. So we had a month or two implementation period, which was us configuring for them and just building the product around their needs. I think the next customer we had was one of our friends from Insight. Her name is Lucy Grayson, and she was employee number 1 at Paperless Post. And they, again, similar, they needed reporting on their product, revenue, usage, invites, that product. And so we brought them on board and helped them out with reporting. And so it sort of was a combination of word of mouth, our networks, and then there was this really successful content piece that Bob actually posted early on about, I don't know if you remember, there were these lawn signs all over the place that said single, checkout, and then extremely specific location, singles.com. And it was
I do remember those, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're on the Fifth Avenue in New York, it'd say Fifth Avenue Singles. If you were in Collingswood, New Jersey, it would say collingswoodsingles.com. Yeah. And it was sort of this investigative journalism thing where we found all these domains, figured out who was hosting them, checked out the business model. Turns out it was all lead gen for this crazy expensive matchmaking service and this real bait and switch thing. But that got on the front page of Dig and Hacker News. So we got a bunch of traffic from that. And I just called every single person that signed up on our website after that. And so, yeah, that was the first thing that got us out of our little network and bubble. And I'd say the first big-ish customer we got was a friend of a friend. Actually, someone from Insight, one of their friends, was chief of staff at this e-commerce startup, Bonobos, the menswear company. And so they, again, needed reporting, and we had the second degree recommendation and brought them on board. And we made it really easy. We didn't ask anybody to sign long-term commitments and sort of proved ourselves as we went.
Wow. Who was building the tech behind it? Or was it a dashboard of some sort, or?
Yeah, that's right. So the product basically, at least in the first version, it connected to our customer's database or databases, replicated the data to our database, ran a bunch of transformations on it to get it into a format that was better for reporting, and then visualized it in a dashboard that we built. And our customers could create new reports, plot different things over time, or run a cohort analysis or whatever. And they can drag and drop those things within the dashboard. And so I probably wrote sub 1% of the first version. Bob wrote more than 99%, and very quickly everything that I did was removed. So yeah, in the early days, it was Bob building it, me selling it. Basically, how it worked.
Wow. That was back like, I mean, if you said BI back then, nobody would even know what that was, right?
Yeah, so we we started Insight 2006, so it was the end of 2008, which is when we started working on RJ Metrics, and like this is before the Lean Startup came out. You know, like I remember like reading the Lean Startup and seeing that he talked about cohort analysis, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is like one of the central parts of what we offer. I hope this becomes popular so that people realize that this is important. And like we had already registered cohortanalysis.com. And so like, yeah, I would say like the data scientist was not a term that was in people's vocabulary at that point. So we were fortunate that that was like, we were there when that wave started to take off.
Right. Wow. So how long did you guys do that?
So we were working on RJ Metrics from 2008, and then we sold it in 2016.
Oh, wow. So you were there for a while.
Yeah, we were. And it was like, yeah, really amazing. So many awesome people worked with us, and like we had a bunch of customers, and we bootstrapped for the first couple of years, and then raised 3 rounds of funding. And ultimately, what happened was like the best case scenario for us. Like we were really good at solving the problem that people who ran an e-commerce store using ideally Magento, which is like an e-commerce shopping platform. It's like Shopify, but open source. And they would have told you this at the time too, the worst reporting interface of any product I've ever seen. It was like poorly designed, not flexible, and like from an architectural standpoint, really problematic, because if you were a high volume store and you pressed like refresh twice on the reporting tab, you could take down your store and you couldn't like process orders anymore. So like
not ideal.
So like our all-time best marketing campaign was advertising against the Google search keyword Magento reports, because I knew if you were marketing on that, it was not going to be good, or like you had a problem. So we were like a partner of Magento for years, and they were a subsidiary of eBay. eBay had bought a bunch of stuff, PayPal, Magento, GSI Commerce, and then ultimately they started spinning all that out. Once a PE firm bought Magento, the next conversation we had with them was not, we don't want to partner anymore. We want to solve this problem by acquiring you guys. And then they brought us basically in-house. And actually what happened is we had separately launched this small second product, which was taking basically part of the technology we had built for RJ Metrics, but selling it on a standalone basis. And we were actually really excited about it because, to be totally honest, the original RJ Metrics product, the growth was starting to stall out. Like we had grown a lot. We had, hundreds of customers and millions of dollars in revenue. But like after a bunch of years of growth, we saw like, okay, our win rates are starting to decrease. The conversion rates are generally just not as good. It's getting more competitive. And like we sort of saw the market pulling away from us and our churn increased. But we saw people like asking us for, can we, like RJ Metrics, still help them with the collecting the data problem and getting it into one thing that came out at the time was this product called Amazon Redshift, which is like a cloud data warehouse. And so they wanted to use part of our technology to do that. So we ended up taking that out, making that into a second product. And then when Magento told us, started talking to us about the acquisition, we just knew that this would not survive that. And like that was depressing because like we really believed in this new product. We thought it honestly had like maybe even more potential than the original product. And like in any negotiation, there were a bunch of things of pushing and pulling. And at one point we were just like, well, why don't you just acquire the original business, which is 99% of our revenue. It's almost our entire team. And like Bob will go with that. And then the rest of the team goes with that. And then Jake and a handful of people will take this new product and spin that out. And that's what became Stitch, which we worked on after that.
Wow. Dude, you've been through it. We're not even through your story yet. That's incredible. That's a lot of that's like a lot of people's like whole career with like just a couple of your businesses.
A lot of action.
A lot of action, a lot of like a lot of different experiences that a lot of people may never even have. It sounds like you maybe have had a few times. So, and then I saw Stitch was acquired. I'm not going to jump ahead there, but like let's talk about Stitch. So you went off and you spun up this product you thought was going to be better than the first one. How did that go?
It went really well. It was like we had much better product market fit for Stitch than we had ever had for RJ Metrics. And it grew faster with a smaller team to a larger size with better unit economics. It was awesome. It was a really great ride. And like it's I think one of the big lessons take away from that is that like just how important product market fit is. Because like we had an amazing team at RJ Metrics and like we had success, but like I saw just like how having the right a better product for the market at the right time can matter more. So yeah, and that was a pretty quick one because we only sold it after a couple of years. But yeah, and there were just like a bunch of, again, we were really fortunate with a bunch of trends sort of going in the right direction at the right time, where I mentioned this Amazon Redshift product, which at the time was Amazon's fastest growing product ever. And then Google came out with a competing product called BigQuery. Microsoft came out with a big competing product, which has changed names a couple times. It was called Azure SQL Data Warehouse. And the big one was Snowflake, the startup happened, which is now, crazy successful public company. But all these cloud warehouses were just changing the way that analytics was done. And now all of a sudden people needed a product that looked a lot like Stitch. So it was either Stitch or one of our competitors to get their data from all their different systems into these cloud data warehouses. And yeah, we solved that problem and we're super easy to set up and yeah, we got a lot of traction. We were really fortunate.
Well, I mean, like the irony is like you're on the other side of what you set out to do, right? Like you were trying to be the venture guy side, and then you ended up being like the guy who's continually selling these companies probably to those guys, right?
Well, we were selling like the companies that acquired us were always like the operating companies. We did raise funding from VCs for the companies. But yeah, the acquirers. But yeah, I mean, like and I do think having a little bit of experience in the VC world helps both with like raising money from VCs as well as, just knowing how the acquisitions tend to go. It's the sort of thing, like you said, the median amount of experience with this stuff is 0. So having just a couple data points is a big advantage. So yeah, I think I was really fortunate for that.
Wow. So you sold, and then you stayed on at Stitch for a little while, right? Like after you sold it?
Correct. Yeah. So so Talend is the name of the company that acquired Stitch. I was there for almost 2 years. The first year I was head of Stitch, like the business unit. It was like a self-contained unit within Talend. And then at the end of that year, we what's called functionalized it. So like instead of being an independent business unit, like our engineering team reported to Talend's global head of engineering. Our sales team reported to Talend's global head of sales. So Stitch was no longer its own business unit. So then I became SVP of growth at Talend for like growth on Talend as a whole for another not quite a year.
And then you decided to leave all that and go start something else?
Yes. Well, at first I did nothing for a little while and it was awesome.
I was about to say, yeah. I mean, you probably earned a little bit of, when I left my last job, I told everybody I retired, but I didn't do anything for a good like 6 to 8 months of just like family time and learning to work on my pilot's license and all sorts of fun stuff that like you can't do when you work a 9 to 5 or you have your own business. So so what did you do in your downtime? Did you do anything? Did you you've been bucket listing?
So my wife and I we went on a 4.5 month road trip around the US.
Beautiful.
It was wild. It was so great. And like, so we basically just got Airbnbs next to national parks or like hiking areas or whatever. Just like the two of us plus our dog, and drove all around and it was great.
Wow.
It was really, really nice.
So you came back from your short sabbatical and said, I'm going to start a paperless online contract company.
That's right. Infinite paper in a paperless world. That's just like Dunder Mifflin.
I told you we were going to have fun. I knew, just based off your Twitter posts and your repost that we were going to get along very well. So tell me about Common Paper. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so all across RJ and Stitch and my time at Talend, like I have been incredibly frustrated with the process of contracts with our customers. Like the beginning of a relationship between a vendor and a customer, it theoretically ought to be like a pretty happy time. Like they've got a problem. They believe in you as the solution. And so there's some vision alignment. Otherwise they wouldn't be talking to you. And then once they're ready to actually, like everybody's ready to do business together, it turns adversarial. And there's like, sometimes there's arguing over whose template to use. There's this insane process of like emailing around Word docs with like track changes and red lines. There's like 17 different versions. And then finally, like there's delays and expenses. And finally, you get the deal signed. And then you actually have to do the stuff that you promised to do in the contract, which is like, if you have one customer or 5 customers, that's not that hard. But if you have hundreds of customers and you just have all these like PDFs in a Dropbox folder,
Right.
It's very challenging to make sure that you're billing people correctly, that you're staying compliant with all your obligations, that like when you like go raise another round of funding or you go to sell the company, you have to answer all these questions about your contracts. And then you go pay the same lawyers who you paid to negotiate them in the first place to go and reread them all to answer these questions. And like we had fantastic lawyers and I really value the service they provide, but it's just like, it was a really shitty system. Mm-hmm. And so like, I felt like I had been like banging my head against that walls for 10 or 15 years and thinking about how it could be better. And that's really the genesis of Common Paper. And part of it is that like, there are examples of contract processes that are so much better, that are like insanely better. And like one example that like I bought the house that I'm in right now, I'm in Pennsylvania. There is a standard PA residential agreement of sale, which is like a contract that everybody, at least in Philly, I don't know about the rest of Pennsylvania, if you buy or sell a house, everybody uses the same contract. Mm-hmm. And there's like 10 things you might negotiate over. It's like price, an escrow period, and a handful of other stuff. But like there's none of the nonsense that this house costs like a lot more than like a single license of Stitch, but like the process took like 1/10 as long and there was like zero headache. Right. Same thing like the safe in early stage fundraising. You go and take money from an angel investor or you go take money from a $20 billion VC fund. If you're an early stage company, they're probably going to invest on the safe. Everybody uses it. There's a couple dials that they turn, a couple things they tweak, but there's just so much less drama. It's so much less adversarial, so much more efficient and faster. And there's like a handful of other examples of this in like online advertising. It's actually in financial derivatives. So anyway, there's this concept of the standard contract where if lots of people use the same contract, it becomes better for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of the puzzle in my view, and in our view, the team's view, is that like, if you're using standard contracts, you can use very different software to manage them. And there becomes like structured data about contracts rather than just free text. And then the contracts can start to look more like an API than a piece of paper with a bunch of ink on it. Right. And that's what we're trying to do.
Wow. So who was your first customer?
So our first customer
you don't have to name names, but yeah, it's up to you.
No, this one I can actually, I was thinking just making sure the first one was actually one of the logos we can talk about publicly. It's a company called Elemental. They make a open source data orchestration tool called Dagster. And they basically, the way that I got connected with them is that our head of sales at Stitch is now head of sales at Elemental. And so we're in touch with them. My co-founder, Ben, is real close friends with him, and I've stayed in touch with Sean and I'm buddies with him. He's the head of sales there. And so when they were getting ready to do their first commercial deals, he knew what we were working on, and we tried to set him up with one of these standard contracts. And it's they gave us a shot, and then like as we've grown more and more, we now power their terms of service and their data privacy agreement and the data processing agreement, their cloud service agreement, the NDAs, and they've sort of grown with us and taken advantage of all the new features and agreements that we've built. And yeah, we sort of grown that way.
So friends and family plan is like the number one by far that I hear time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, and also, yeah, I feel like the ideally, either you can find people in your network that need the product, or you can become friends with people who are like in your target market, and then you get a deeper understanding of them. And because also, like, a lot of times I talk to these people over and over again, so my job would be not very fun if they weren't people that I wanted to be friends with.
But I think the trust level is just so high with somebody you've worked with before, which like that barrier to entry is just like, well, yeah, of course I know Jake. I worked with him for years at Stitch. Why would we not give his, I know he's not an asshole. He's not going to screw us over. I know he's probably making a good product, blah, 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 blah. All the things that you'd have to try to convince a stranger of. I think that barrier is gone, which we hear a lot.
I think you're absolutely right. And then the other thing is that there's a whole common shared experience set and vocabulary where, like, it's a hard thing to, like, figure out your positioning and messaging.
That's fair.
And, like, how you explain to a brand new person. And just with someone that you've known for years, I can say, do you remember that terrible time we had doing that thing? And he says, yes, of course. And I say, wouldn't it be great if we could have done this instead? And he said, yes, of course. And I said, check out this thing that I've made, or that we've made. And so, like, you could just be so much more efficient, and you can have, because, like, it's not just building a good product, it's also helping people understand your approach to the problem and that shared vocabulary and experience.
Yeah, the shared experience is huge. That's a great point. And being able to reference similar things that have happened before. Right. So you don't seem like somebody who typically has reasons why you put things off, but I'm curious if there's an answer to this question. What held you back initially from starting Common Paper to the point that you finally did?
I would say running Stitch.
That's fair. I was going to say, there's different answers for that depending on the context of what you were doing before. So I think, but I mean, you said you've had this idea for 10 to, I guess it's just living the problem long enough, right?
Yeah. And I would say, like, there's been a germ of an idea, or at least a frustration with the problem. And, like, I have a series of notes, and, like, in whatever note-taking app I'm using at the time, where it's just like, I'll just, like, have a headline, and, like, contracts. And, there's maybe 20 other notes that are just like that. And then every time I think of something, I'll add a bullet point. This note is, like, 3 times longer than all the other notes combined. And so I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I was working on RJ Metrics or working on Stitch. So, like, that was my main thing, no matter how passionate I was about this. And honestly, like, our sabbatical was supposed to be longer than 4.5 months. And we were in, like, what I consider to be one of the most beautiful places in the world, Moab, Utah, right next to Arches National Park. And we were originally going to spend a month there. And I had, like, found the one co-working place there and rented a desk and was, like, doing customer discovery calls. And my wife said to me, she's like, I think you failed out of the sabbatical. Do you want to just go home?
You're out. You're back home.
Right. Wow. So we headed back after that. So, like, I was trying to do all the other stuff, but this pulled me in.
All right. So if you had to start Common Paper over again tomorrow, with everything you've learned so far, what would be step one?
I'd call Ben Garvey, my co-founder. That would probably be step one. Here's one thing that I did before, like, formally kicking off Common Paper, which I'd probably do slightly differently this time, which is that I had customer discovery calls with literally 100 people, and that was overkill. I could have, spent less time on that and then gotten into, like, building or I mean, like this was also like mostly before Ben got involved. And I was also just like part-time, but I think that was like overkill. Like I think it's very valuable to do a bunch of customer discovery calls, but I don't think I was like in the last 40 learning a whole bunch of new stuff.
Right.
So if I would need to learn all the stuff again, I would have again done something similar, but I probably would have cut that shorter.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, let's switch gears. What are some things I typically go with 3? What are 3 things you're doing to stay healthy, to keep your longevity up, to make sure you're around for a while? What are your 3 top things?
So I exercise every day, usually in the morning. And like my number one priority there is mental health. And I feel like it like dramatically improves my anxiety, which is a challenge. I like eat pretty healthy. Like I don't eat like dessert or candy, cookies, ice cream, anything like that. Just trying to like stay healthy. And then the other thing I do is I try to get, plenty of sleep. And most of the time I'm successful. We have a 8-week-old daughter at home.
Congratulations. I didn't know
Thank
that.
you very much.
That's a challenge though. That is the biggest counter to the morning workout that I've had in my life is the baby late nights and you feel like you're going to die when you normally wake up at your normal time.
Yeah, and we're super fortunate. She's in like a really good sleep phase now. We've got a lot of help, and my wife is amazing. And so I feel like I have found a new routine. Like I had one routine before, and I think I'm settling into a new groove. So like I'm in a good spot now. But the one thing I have learned is that it very well may change tomorrow. So I got something that's working today.
I almost fell off my chair. He said no cookies, no candy, no sweets. Man, I've got a. This probably explains those pearly white teeth you got. You got no. You don't have any sugar. Rotting them away. I have a sweet tooth, man, and I have to fight it like no tomorrow. But yeah, all those things. I mean, the exercise, the diet, the sleep. Any successful person basically says the same 3 things. And the mental health is big too. Do you meditate?
Yeah, I had a really good meditation habit, and then I got off it right around 8 weeks ago, and I have not. I've sort of like I've done it sporadically since then, but I have not yet found a new groove for like my daily meditation practice.
Do you use an app or anything?
So the one I use most often is it's called Waking Up.
Yep.
It's
I was gonna say that's my one, man. That's my one.
Although I like more often than not, I just have like a little like timer on my watch that I'll set 10 minutes. So like sometimes I'll do a guided one with Waking Up. Sometimes I do just like decide I'm going to do it for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever.
I need to do that more. I sometimes get annoyed with Sam. I love Waking Up and I love the app. Yeah. There's certain ones, and I also find myself very annoyed when he says, we're going to start this one with our eyes open. And I'm like, God, no, come on, man. Like, I don't want to do this. I mean, I get it. And there's, they're good. They're great. I think having an app that is guided is a good way to like get in that routine of, doing it every day.
The other thing, which if you haven't checked out, I'd recommend there's, in addition to like you choose the meditation, there's the one where like you get like a push alert periodically and there's like a 30-second or 1 minute one.
Okay.
I'll sometimes save those for whenever I want to sit, and I'll have like him talking for the first 30 seconds or minute, and then I'll go for another 10 minutes or something like that. And I find that's really nice to like, it sort of helps me get on track, and then I just go on my own after that.
I like that. I used to do, before I found Waking Up, I would do it unguided. And it's certainly, I think there's benefit in both. I think it's just a different
100%.
You get a different thing out of it. I don't know what it is. It's hard to articulate some of that stuff, but and all right, so mystery question time, and nobody ever watches these podcasts, and nobody knows what the mystery question is, which is fine. So I always say somebody's going to come with a really prepared answer. I'm going to know that they saw a previous one, but it's probably hard for somebody as accomplished as you are. But what is something that you would do if you knew you couldn't fail?
I would try to remove 95 from Philadelphia.
All right. I mean, wow. I always get different answers, but that is probably the most different. Like, that's a great, I mean, you would just remove it.
Yeah, I mean, like I would either reroute it or just make it disappear. Like
Do you live near it? Is that why?
I live like sort of near it. Like I can't hear it from where I live. I just think it's insane that we have highways going through cities, period.
Yeah.
Like they should go around cities.
Right.
And it's just like, why would you like have the air pollution and the noise and and like the block the waterfront? Like there you see, I'm a big fan of cities. I love cities. I love reading about them. I love the history of Philadelphia. And like, I think America and a lot of the world like made a big mistake when I think it's great that we have interstate highways. I just think we should not put them in the most densely populated part of the country where there are people that want to walk.
That's a great answer. I am, like I mentioned before this, I'm temporarily relocated to a rental. We have about another month left till we get to move home. So I had to move a family of 7 out for about 5 to 6 months. And we're almost done. But I say that because the Pennsylvania Turnpike is at the back of this neighborhood. And I was walking around the neighborhood, and there's like some show in the last couple of years where like there was some giant wall, and like they were like that's what it looks like at the back of this neighborhood. Like it looks like a prison. Like I'm like some people's backyard in this neighborhood is a 40-foot tall, sound blocking wall of, and I can hear it from here. I can't hear, I live like 20 minutes from here north, but living this close to it and hearing it every day, I feel like it would drive me crazy if I lived here all the time. Just like that constant hum and the constant like noise of cars revving up and down. Yeah. So I love that answer. It's a great one. All right, well, let's end it there. This was fantastic. I knew it was going to be good. You didn't disappoint. Where can people find you, Jake? Where can they find Common Paper?
You can go to commonpaper.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Common Paper's on LinkedIn. I'm at Jake Stein on Twitter. Common Paper is use Common Paper on Twitter. Yeah.
How long until Elon totally destroys Twitter?
That's a great question. Depends who you ask. I would say some people it's already been destroyed.
My feed, I got in late to Twitter, and it was kind of like a little bit before he took over. Yeah. And my feed is just like, it's tough, man. I don't enjoy it at all. Yeah, it's gotten
worse. It's also just like, and I don't know if this matters to your audience, but like it's shocking to me now, like when we announce a new features, and this may be because what we do, but like we get so much more traffic from LinkedIn than Twitter. Mm-hmm. It's gigantic, and that may be because like we're doing a business thing and like business stuff happens on LinkedIn. But yeah, I've been really surprised by like how important LinkedIn is to us as a business and how Twitter has just not been.
Yeah, I don't know where that's going. I don't know. It seems like a wasteland at this point. But
Blue Sky invite. You want to hook me up with that?
I don't have one. If you have one, then
I don't.
Trying to find I was in Mastodon. I was thinking anything other than Twitter. But I didn't do Mastodon yet either. So I'm just trying to stick to LinkedIn. There's too many things. There's too many places to try to update stuff and keep stuff. You probably know that as a business. You're like,
I gotta focus all my attention on Netflix. Really.
I like that.
Zero in there.
All right, buddy. Well, it was great. Cool. Thank you for being on.
My pleasure, Jake. Thank you.
If anybody wants to reach out to Jake, I have trialed your product, and I think it's great. So hope people check it out, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, buddy?
All right. Thanks, Jake.
See you, Jake.
It's fun.
Later, man.
Take it easy.
See ya.